Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bonus edition or episode of your New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans, as we will welcome in Mr. Randy Livingston here today, Jim Eichenhofer. I don't know if you've seen the long list of accolades and things that Randy has done, from winning 3 state titles back in 91, 92, and 93. You're very good in math, aren't you? You good at math?
Pretty decent, yeah.
What's the winning percentage when you win 114 games to only 15 losses?
Ooh, 90-something%.
You see, you were actually going to give me a number. I was just going to say that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Randy went on to play at LSU, was a former NBA player as well, state senator, current high school basketball coach over at Newman, does stuff with AAU. He does a lot with basketball and has done a lot in the world of basketball. It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Very decorated list of accomplishments and connections that he has to the basketball world, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things that he's doing now is trying to raise awareness of gambling. You can have fun with it. At the same time, it could also be something that can kind of catch you maybe off guard. Next thing you know, there's a problem. And there's a reason every time we talk about gambling or we talk about gaming, there's that tagline towards the end. If you have a problem, do that. We don't just do that to be legalese, but it's true. It's just like anything else in moderation. You have fun and stuff. And I thought his background of dealing with it and understanding how to overcome it there as well with he and his wife, it was a very interesting story.
It is, and within the last few years, he's really been public about explaining his story, his background of that he had problems with gambling and getting into certain situations. ESPN did an article a few years ago about how much of the estimated $2.5 million that he made during his NBA career he spent on gambling. So he's been trying to help other people, avoid some of the problems, and also tell people that if they get into the situation, there's ways that you can be helped. FanDuel launched a responsible betting resource hub in September, and he and his wife are a big part of that as the ambassadors for that. So that's a lot of what he's going to be speaking about today.
No doubt. Well, here's our conversation with Randy Livingston. Time now to have a very special guest or two, Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, to the Pelicans podcast, Mr. Randy Livingston, whose resume is not quite as yours. Just a couple of state titles, 3 to be the. I don't know if you know this, Mr. Randy Livingston. First off, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us.
He did not have a state championship under his belt, but Jim Eichenhofer does have a very interesting basketball story to tell. That one time you got in on some action. You want to tell that real quick?
The story has become infamous at this point. No, I wasn't in the rotation, so we had a game where we were down by 20, 30 points, and the last couple minutes of the game I got in, the other coach wanted to just run the clock out, and I was like, I've been sitting for like a month on the bench. I don't want to just watch the other team dribble out the clock. So I started fouling a little bit, and Gus hasn't let me let it down since then. I started fouling because I wanted to stop the clock, and I wanted to play some basketball. So that's basically, to make a long story short, what happened.
What school?
It's actually in the Syracuse area of New York State.
Okay.
This was my high school that I went to. But yeah, that was one of the lowlights of my high school career.
And Randy, being a current high school basketball coach and 3-time state title, 114 wins under that career there as well. Well, what do you think of that? I mean, is that something you would like as a head coach?
I would be okay with that if I wasn't the opposing team. But if he's on my team, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I remember the opposing fans were very upset with me too. It was a road game for us, and they were just like, because this was actually JV basketball. They were like, we want the varsity game to start. Why is this idiot stopping the clock by fouling people? So they were very unhappy with me at that point.
And if I'm your coach, this is your moment. What's wrong with that?
Exactly.
I'm going to have my moment, so I'm okay with that.
That's what I told him. I said, look, I mean, that shows a lot of effort, a lot of 1-2 and desire to do that, man. But look, obviously very happy to have you in here as well, as you're partnered up with FanDuel to be an ambassador. And we'll talk a little bit about that here as well in terms of gaming and the importance of that. Because, look, when we get into basketball and we play sports, it's about fun. right? And first and foremost. And it's always fun to kind of every now and be like, man, I bet I can knock down this shot, or I bet I can do something from that nature. So that word bet and gaming and games and sports has always kind of been one in the same, hasn't it?
No, definitely. And it kind of lends itself to athletics. You got competitive guys and, they're always betting on something. I mean, every year I get people on Newman campus saying, can you fill out their bracket for the NCAA tournament? And,
right.
Obviously me being in the space that I'm in right now in recovery, I don't touch it. But it's always around anything. You got players on the team. Hey, you want to shoot some three-pointers after practice? I bet you I can make more than you. So the word's always out there. And so, with today's age, you got to be careful about everything in terms of what we're, instilling in the young generation minds.
No doubt. Jim always bets the free bottled waters that you see in front of us, so he never has to really go into town or in his pocketbooks when you look at it that nature. Explain what FanDuel and you guys are doing here in terms of being gaming ambassadors.
Well, for me, I've been in this space for 6 or 7 years, and what me and my wife Anita was looking for was just somebody to partner to amplify the message. Going through, 20, 25, 30 plus years of, gambling, and then having been a problem gambling for a long time throughout my NBA career. Like I said, I just wanted to amplify my voice, and it was clear to us once we started talking to him, we had a partner to be able to do that in FanDuel. And it's been great. And to be completely honest, we're all new in this space. We want to do our very best to really pretty much educate and bring awareness to problem gambling with young generation, with coaches, with families. I think it's just important for people to understand, the risks, the warning signs, and, there's all sorts of new stuff like proxy betting, that people can get in trouble for. Yeah. So I think it's extremely important at this age and time with the rise of gaming and sports betting and anything to do with betting, like we talk about, that people understand it, because it's a rising culture in the world today at a fast, rapid pace.
And certainly, a lot of this stuff is kind of relatively new in terms of the legalization of it. And obviously the NBA had a player from Toronto that had a specific issue with this during the past season. So I feel like it's something that has become more prominent in terms of people's understanding of it and that kind of thing. What are some of the things that you can tell us about the Trusted Voices initiative that FanDuel has?
You want to take this, or you want me to go?
Sure. Good to be here, guys. So Trusted Voices is a parent-focused resource hub which is aimed at adults, which can include parents and coaches, everybody basically in that inner circle, to give information, tools, guidance on how to speak to young people about gambling. And as Randy said, that includes things like how to identify, the warning signs, how to, understand what the risks are, and how to know, what the rules are around things like proxy betting.
I think one of the things that's interesting, I think about in terms of the warning signs, and either you guys can kind of answer that. What is a warning sign, right? Because a lot of times when you think of getting into a problem or something of that nature, you don't know it's a problem, right? So let's just, start from the basic. How do you know it's a problem? When do you know it's a problem?
Well, she can speak from being a partner of someone that has a problem gambler. And I think for me, I think it boils down to knowing the person from the very beginning, or if you know them for a little while. I think the first sign really usually is behavior changes, being antsy, always looking at the phone, always wondering what happened at the end of the game, quarters. I think those are things that I think just show up automatic. But if you're not aware of that one person or a kid or adult or whoever, or mentor or coach is having issues, it could kind of slip through. But I think there's always that anxiety and basically the change in behavior is one that I think to me, and I'm speaking on lived experience. Yeah. I'm sure my behavior, your sleep patterns, all of those things can play a part. But like I was at a seminar just recently, The real problem with problem gambling, though, is you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't see it. Like, it's really hard. You can be I lived with it for a long time, a normal, still working adult.
Sure.
But if you're alcoholic or drug, it starts taking effect on your job, starts taking effect on a lot of things. But this is a tricky one in terms of what a problem gambler looks like and the warning signs, because sometimes you can't see it right away.
Right.
But there are some behavioral things that I think that come up that, kind of sends off warning signals. And as a partner, maybe you can help.
Yeah, I would say there's two things that I want to raise here. One is because there's so much stigma in talking about problem gambling, perhaps more than many other forms of addiction, is that, as Randy said, sometimes you don't even realize you have an addiction yourself. And even if you get to that point of realizing that there is a problem, you don't necessarily want to ask for help. You don't want to talk to someone about it, whether it's a loved one, whether it's someone who you can go to for help. So, that's kind of problem number one that we are really passionate about, is trying to destigmatize the conversation about gambling, and in particular problem gambling. So if you think you have a problem, we want you to feel comfortable having that conversation, reaching out to a trusted friend or a trusted partner or a trusted voice, as the program is called. And not only that, but the reverse is true as well. So the person in my position, so the supportive partner or sibling or friend or coach who notices these kind of changes happening, needs to feel comfortable having that uncomfortable conversation and reaching out and saying, hey, I've noticed some changes. Is there anything I can help you with? Like, is this about gambling? Are you going too far? Are you not, following your own objectives and guidelines and rules that you've imposed in yourself? Randy says that, you have an addiction when you betray your own values. And I think that's a useful guideline to think about. Like, if you have you betrayed your own values? That's a useful question to ask. The other point to note is the way that FanDuel talks about responsible gaming. And I think FanDuel has taken this step because they want to be seen as leaders in setting the standards for responsible gaming. So they talk about things like that gambling, sports betting should really be entertainment focused. It should be something that you do for enjoyment. It's something that enhances your experience of a game, not detracts from it. So that could be one indicator. Another indicator could be, do you have a budget? Are you betting to your budget? If you start exceeding your budget, that's another indicator that there might be a problem. Do you have a plan? Number one. If you don't get a plan, and then are you sticking to your plan? So these are all kinds of indicators that if you don't have a plan, or if you have a plan, you're not sticking to it, or if you have a budget and you're exceeding the budget, all of these are kind of red flags that, should prompt you to ask questions like, do I actually have a problem here? Do I need to seek help?
Is that your middle name? Is it Odin?
Ondine.
Ondine. Okay, I want to make sure about this.
Ondine.
Anita Ondine Smith. Okay, cool. Speak with Randy Livingston and Anita Ondine Smith. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you so
My last
much.
name's Kattengell. You'd be shocked how many times it gets butchered. Actually, you wouldn't be butchered at all or shocked at all. I'm trying to explain it to my 7-year-old. Break it down in 3 letters. Kattengell. So yeah, I get it all messed up. So wanted to make sure I said it correctly. You got anything, Jim?
My last name is Eichenhofer too, so that's even harder. I always remember when I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade looking at the label in front of my desk to make sure I spelled my own last name correctly. So that was a challenge. But Randy, I wanted to ask you, people kind of joke with me that I've been here forever because I've been working for the team since 2005, but you actually predated me when you played for New Orleans. I mean, what was that experience like? What are some of the things that you remember from that of being, it was actually the very first team that played in New Orleans. I mean, and obviously you being from the area and playing at LSU. I mean, what was that experience like to be able to do that?
It was incredible. It was a dream come true. I mean, from my journeyman career, I have a million stories, and that was just one of many, but a highlight. I think I started that year off in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I got a contract from Dynamo, which is a team in Russia, in Moscow. Went over there. I got there. They were looking for a point guard. I fit the bill. When I got there, new coach, he wanted a big man. So I lasted 1 month. That was a good experience. I think I stayed in a hotel where the Bourne movie was shot. I vividly remember the motorbike scene or the scene he was chasing. Yeah, that's where I stayed.
Yeah.
And then I came back home and I was like, okay, I can go back to the CBA. At the time, it wasn't the G League yet or the NBA Development League yet. And I went back for like a week, and then somebody got hurt or something happened, and then I got called up. So it was a whirlwind of a trip to get all the way back home, but it was incredible just to come back and play in your home city. I don't think I was here for a long period of time, but it was just good to have mom, family come see me play and just to put on that uniform. I mean, that was really, really good. And then afterwards, after that ended, I remember I wore number 3. And then they're like, if you have to use any camp, you can't use that because CP3. Where's the number? So like, it was a great experience, but like, you know, I wouldn't trade that for the world to come back and be able to play home. And I think we weren't the Pelicans yet; we were the Hornets.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they changed a little bit later after that. It's interesting you say camp. One of the things I was noticing, and in case you can follow Randy over on social at RealCoach LIV on Instagram and on X too. Just, you know, you have some camps over there at Newman and have that. Just the ability to kind of look back at your career from being a player, going through this, and as we're talking about gaming and awareness, but still being involved in basketball, man, and still being very involved as a coach. It was interesting listening to Anita kind of describe warning signs and seeing those things. It's no different than what you do as a coach, isn't it, Randy?
No, for sure. I think for me, to be able to give back, like when I was playing in NBA, all the veteran guys, Clive Drexler, Charles Barkley, Keem Olajuwon, giving back was important. I think it was a natural fit for me. Everybody told me towards the end of my career you would be a good coach. Sam Presti was one of those guys who was GM. Kevin O'Connor, who was in Utah, that was like, Randy, you would make a great coach. And so it was a natural fit. It wasn't easy. I got indoctrinated very quickly. As once I retired, I started working in Boise, Idaho for the Idaho Stampede. Brian Gates has been an assistant coach here on multiple occasions. He was the head coach, so I got started right away. And then worked up in Maine for the Portland Ray Claws and Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge. Those guys are up there. And it's just weird from assistant coach to head coach. That one seat over is so different, you know, because you think you're ready. And then, you know, you get a job and you start off the season 0-7. And so in professional sports, you know, you get fired if you don't do the job. So, you know, I wasn't worried about that, but, you know, it crossed my mind. But then we turned it around. A couple trades, we turned it around. It was a great season. And I'm saying that to say is like the G League and the NBA Development League is a incredible growing tool for any young coaches because at that point I wore many hats. I wore the hat of GM, travel, okay? I wore the hat of head coach, and I did from everything from draft prep to doing a draft to working with agents, trying to get players and talent, budget. And we had a budget stickler in our owner there, but he's been a great friend and ambassador for me and a mentor in Bill Eilert at Idaho Stampede. So, yeah, so you have to wear a lot of different hats, and you have to see where there's weaknesses and then strengthen the team, where you need to get better. You have to be honest with yourself and the job you're doing and your staff. You have to pick a staff who knows what they're doing, who's loyal, who understand the business. Now, loyalty in the development league is tough because everybody from the radio, the broadcasters, the scores tables, the players, cheerleaders, everybody's trying to move to the NBA. So day to day, month to month, year to year, people are moving on. So, but you learn very quickly how to adjust. And I think that has served me probably the most in going through that experience early on through my coaching career. Going through my playing career and being a journeyman, you just learn to move on to the next job and figure out, how to continue to build on your resume, but then also continue to grow in the profession. And I think that's also important for any young person in any profession, that you have to pay your dues.
Yeah.
But you also have to learn as you go. You may think you're ready, and then you hit an 0-7 season and wondering if you're going to get the call from the owner, but you still have to do your job. You have to get up every day and do your job and continue to get better. So I say that to say I've worked all levels. Mm-hmm. I started at pro, I've done college, I've done overseas, I've done grassroots, I'm doing high school now. So I've seen the monotony of different sports and the different levels, mm-hmm. and I truly enjoy where I'm at. I think I can be an NBA head coach. Like, I truly believe that. I truly believe I can be a college head coach at a major Power 5 school. And so it's about opportunity, but it's okay to pay your dues, and it's okay to, work your way in and out of the coaching profession and continue to keep a job and then continue to advance.
Yeah, and influence the young kids that are coming up here as well. Anita, you have an interesting story as well. I hear the accent. It's not Chalmette, right? It's not across the river and that nature. Yeah, exactly. That down under from Australia. And it's one of the things that I've learned in the last 2 summer leagues that Jim and I have been able to go do and call Pels games. Australian basketball is massive. It's probably right there. I know we see a lot, and Randy, we talk a lot about European basketball, but Australian basketball professionally is just as big. We've seen influence here locally with the Pels and things of that nature, but you're an agent. So you're kind of familiar with not only their game, but getting here to the NBA and the world and where basketball is right now. I guess just tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm an attorney by profession, mm-hmm. so I'm used to doing deals and doing contracts, negotiating. When Randy and I were living back in Australia for 4 years, we ran a scouting service looking at Australian and New Zealand players. So that was really from grassroots up to college level, and we got to know the talent inside out. We saw multiple Australian players get drafted, and we felt coming off the back of that it was sort of a natural progression for me to get my agent license, utilize those negotiating skills, and work with some of these players that we had been scouting and really getting to know and understand their game. So I tend to focus on international players, with Australia and Japan being my 2 markets that I specialize in.
Wow. I think what's amazing when you think of like where globally basketball has gone, Randy, I mean, just again, starting from Newman to LSU to your pro career to now doing high school, can you see how big the game has grown globally?
Yeah, definitely. Had you told me in high school that I would play and live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Boise, Idaho, mm-hmm. live in Hobart, Tasmania, visit every state in Australia I've been to, from Western Australia to the Northern Territory, to Queensland, to New South Wales, to South Australia. I've been through every quarter of basketball. And I think the most, everybody says when you're in the U.S. as a player, when you're sleeping, someone's working, then you really see it.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling because mm-hmm. it's the truth. When we're sleeping, Australia is working. The guys are working and getting better. And so since the Dream Team, the world has caught up. We can be as honest with that. And mm-hmm. it has, as you saw this summer. I mean, I'm going to be honest. In the next Olympics in L.A., the French team could beat them. The starting lineup's going to be Wemby, who's, 7'3"? And then the draft picks from Atlanta, who's 6'10", and another guy is 6'10", another guy who's 6'9". That could be their starting lineup. But then the Australian team, when living there, I knew the 24 and 28 Olympics, their team would be strong. Mm-hmm. I saw Ben Simmons at an early age. I would like to say I had a hand in Dante Exum's getting drafted as high as he did from mm-hmm. behind the scenes, because I know a lot of NBA GMs, but that's when we were doing the scouting service. Mm-hmm. So they would all call me and ask me about the talent. Yeah. And so the game of basketball has definitely risen around the world, and to some extent, I like watching European basketball more than the NBA game sometimes.
Fundamentally,
yeah, they're fundamentals. I got a chance to see my own son this summer. Randy Livingston Jr. played for the Italian under-16 national team. And so he enjoyed the experience. It's different than AAU basketball over here, which I'm the director of the Nike EYBL team here in Louisiana. And so I see all the top-level talent, but over in Europe, the game is played differently. In Australia, the game is played different. It's taught differently. And, you know, sometimes I would hate to say it. I think Adam Silver was correct. The game needs to evolve a little bit more here in the U.S. And it was still the best, so let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, there's some teaching of the fundamentals and the team aspect of the game that is definitely important. And I had a conversation with the Pels GM over the last year or so. You know, there's a certain bit of entitlement that comes with the American players that get fed all of you're the best thing since sliced bread in AAU basketball. And in college, they go 1 year and they're still young. And if you're an NBA team, do you want to deal with that and some of the baggage that comes with that? Or do you want to deal with someone that you know works hard because they've been in a pro system already, they know how to play team basketball, and now we just have to fit them into our culture? That's the age-old question, and you saw that in this year's draft.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that I think Adam Silver has talked about, too, and people in basketball in general, is just the way that overseas that they teach kids that are 6th, 7th grade is different than we have kids playing so many games, whereas it seems like they, in general, kind of stress practice more, you know, the fundamentals, the shooting skills, and I think that's a big difference. One of the things I wanted to ask you, too, Randy, that I was curious about is how much do your players that you have now know about your playing career? Are they aware of, you know, the fact that just all the stuff that you accomplished and, you know, one of the best high school players in the country, that kind of thing? Or are they just too young to have any grasp of all that stuff?
I think they're way too young to grasp it. But some of the smart ones are historians of the game, and they see it. It's hard to, and this was one thing when I first took the job at Newman, my older brother Ronald said was, you know, you got to remember it's about the kids and not all of the accolades that I have on the wall. So it's hard for the Newman players to not see it because it's there. From the banners, from the jersey being retired, and all of the hardware in the trophy case. But at the same time, I think this generation of kids, are they Z? I can't.
I lost track of the letters as well, too.
But I think they're all about what's going on in their lives. They're not worried about so much about the past. I think the clever ones learn the history of the game or in the area they're at, but I think the kids today are all about what's going on social media right now.
Sure.
Is there something you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to actually cycle back to what you were talking about with the internationalization of the game, which I'm really excited about. Obviously, being an international person, I'm very focused on what's happening outside of the United States as well as here in the United States. And I think what's important for us here to remember is it benefits everybody when the game grows at a global level. So when I brought one of my clients, the Japanese player Makoto Hiyajima, to the Pelicans for Summer League a few years back, the excitement that generated in Japan cannot be underestimated. I don't know if you remember this, but Zion was playing that same Summer League, and there was Makoto and Zion, and they both had about the same number of media huddled around them after every game. You remember that?
I do remember that, yep.
And it was mind-blowing to me to see that. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, okay, number one draft pick, and then you've got only a small number of Japanese players who have ever played in the NBA.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a fewer number than there's been number one draft picks. So the attention in Japan on Makoto, and the other player that I sent to Summer League that same year was Yudai Baba to the Dallas Mavericks, and he was getting a similar amount of attention, is that these guys have the ability to ignite excitement in a game like nothing else. Like, you can't even imagine it. And I remember the following visit I had to Japan, and I started seeing like Pelicans jerseys on the street in Tokyo. I'm like, that
great.
is so cool. You know, I just find that awesome. And as you can imagine, in Australia now, when I'm back there, Pelicans fans exist in Australia.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much we kind of sit back and really drink that in.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super cool to know that there's Pelicans fans here in New Orleans, there's Pelicans fans in Australia,
Yeah.
and that ability to grow the game beyond borders is, to me, what the game is all about. It's about building bridges and finding commonality and finding things that we can get together behind, that breaks boundaries. And to me, that's the beauty of the game, is it's a game that is played internationally and we can all get together around this ball.
No doubt about it. And just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Jordan with the Zion with the Jordan brand over in China. They were doing their tour. Daniel Tice is one of the newest members of the Pelicans. He's from Germany.
Yep.
Saw him in the Olympics and play. So
The gold medal game everybody was
there it is.
glued into it.
Yeah.
It was incredible to watch. So, and even on the ladies' side, and obviously we're seeing what not just Caitlin Clark, but obviously what we saw with Angel Reese and LSU and the women's game, the excitement. I mean, hoops right now is growing so much, but kind of as we circle back and I guess wrap up with y'all's partnership with FanDuel and being ambassadors and trusted voices, there's so much access. Today's generation, being able to look at all these games, follow players, access to players, DMs, all those different things, is the thing that we should take away from our conversation education and just, I guess, being aware more than anything else? Just, is that what we take out of this?
I think so. And I think really with Trusted Voices, we're just we're an access points for families, for coaches, from human beings, period. And we want that information to be there if it's needed. And I think, and when I say that, if you do come across and you meet some of the criteria for problem gambling, because let's face it, everybody that gambles or gaming doesn't necessarily have a problem. But if you come across it, here are the things you need to do. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think for me, if I can help one kid, one player, one family avoid the heartaches and emotional and the financial strain of the situation that I went through and my lived experience, the journey's well worth it for me. And I think that was all I ever wanted to do after I began my recovery, is to take it a day at a time and just get people who are struggling with problem gambling disease to get help. Like, that's, to me, that's important, to know that you can get help. Like, you're not alone. We can, break that stigma of you can't talk about it, you can't get help, or you got to go sit in a closet somewhere and struggle on your own. I think that's important for the message, and I think we share that with FanDuel, and that's why this partnership has been so amazing to date, and we're going to continue to grow.
Yep.
I would say that, we want to be clear on one thing. We're not against gambling. We're not against sports betting. We're not prohibitionists. We know that a lot of people derive a lot of pleasure from this, but we want to make sure that it remains a positive experience for people. And in doing so, that means having some guardrails available for those who need them, and being able to recognize when that need exists and how to take action as a result of it. So we're hoping that the resources that we're making available in conjunction with FanDuel really do make an impact, really do make a difference, and people who are maybe thinking about getting help hear this message and go ahead and check out conversationsaboutbetting.com and follow the links there to find further information. But I also want to say that, Randy and I are sitting here in testimony that you can get through this. So it is an incredibly destructive disease when it's at its worst, and it has destroyed a lot of families, at its worst. And we don't want people to go through that. We want you to know that if you can identify the warning signs, you have the strength and courage to take action, you get the resources you need, you can work through it, and life can be great again.
Yep, no doubt. Great I mean, I don't think you can say any better. And Randy, I think the period or the exclamation mark at that is to have the strength to be able to say, hey, I need a little help.
No, 100%. I mean, and
like in anything in life, man. I need help, coach, on this. I need help on that, and having a strong partner to be there for you.
I agree, and a lot of times as former players or athletes now, we've used to get to the top of the food chain in our profession.
Yeah.
Willpower, work hard, work through it, do it on our own, do this. But I think no matter what the issues are, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be problem gambling. Get help. I think that's stronger. I mean, if you'd have told me this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that getting help was a sign of strength, I would, have not known that. But now going through it and coming out on the other side, getting help is definitely a sign of strength, not a weakness.
Randy, Anita, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and giving us not only awareness, but great stories of how basketball and the growth of it, man, has been incredible to see. And it's like anything else, moderation, education, and just know your signs, man, and ask for help if you need it.
Absolutely. It's been great being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the season.
Go Pels.
And Saints.
Our thanks to Randy and his wife. Very educational there, and also to hear a story that's personal and how to get help if you need it. And more importantly, understand that just like anything else, man, you can have fun, moderation, but more importantly, just educate yourself about it.
And it seems like one of those topics. I think mental health would also fit into this category.
Good point.
Of 5-10 years ago, we didn't talk about it a lot, and it was kind of something that people shied away from in terms of either admitting that they had a problem or reaching out to someone for help. But it seems like, obviously, with how much gaming and betting are increasing in our society, this is something that I think is becoming more and more relevant as time goes on.
Yeah, no doubt. Go give Randy a follow at RealCoachLIV, Instagram and on X. Again, thanks to Randy and FanDuel for giving us a little education from that standpoint. I'm Gus Kattengell. It's Jim Eichenhofer. We'll see you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.